Another reason I wanted to come back to BELCO was from an environmental standpoint. We are the only company in Bermuda who has been certified to the ISO management system. And I'm going to give you a lot of science tonight as well. But I also know, as Ms. Hayward told me, Sharon Hayward, who can't be here with us tonight, but has told me, Mark, you could spit all the science you want in the world, but it just doesn't deal with the emotional response to living in the neighborhood. So I have to, within my role, obviously follow the science, but I'm also not naive enough to think that that's going to appease people within the room. But I want to give you that information as well. And like I said, as Dan points out, I will be here for 20 minutes after. My team will be here, and please ask all the questions that you want, and we'll provide you that information. And I'm also very excited to hear Jeff speak at the end of this as well about our energy transition. So we have a lot of programs here at BELCO as part of our requirements, a lot of standard operating procedures, whether it's just to do with something as basic as roof painting and compensation, whether it's to do with our ambient air quality monitoring, our opacity monitoring, our soil remediation programs. These are all things that we've been doing for years. We test air quality at 2 locations, one out here on Cemetery Lane and one up on Mount Hill. All of our monitoring is overseen by the DNR, who tells us through our operating license what we have to monitor for. All of that data is shared in quarterly reports with the DNR for review. It's also up, I believe, on our website with all our information. So we are very transparent with the data. If you need help finding it, please let me know. Opacity is the same thing for us. It's the measure of the amount of smoke that passes through the beam. We have a 15% opacity requirement on startup, on running hours, on things like that. So these are all things that we do a bit beyond what else is going in Bermuda. And we don't do it because we're governed to do it. We've taken on a lot of these things voluntarily, even before things were passed in legislation, pretty much because it was the right thing to do. And I know that's air quality, and I get it. Like I said, I can only give you the science of what we do every day. Soil remediation, whether that's through testing procedures, various processes that we have. We also do water rights testing. We have a bunch of wells that are located all around this facility that are also measured to see where the oil meets the water, if there's any sort of oil. We are also have an environmental remediation obligation on our old power station, which our team are managing right now to remove any subsurface oil, and that's all done under the direction of the DNR. We work very closely with the DNR. Annually, we have to present our level of compliance against our operating license requirements to the DNR and Environmental Authority, who would then grant us the operating license if they see fit. So we're very happy to say that, while we meet compliance, and these are all things I can tell you, it does resonate with me what you guys are going through every day, okay, within this, and what you guys have been going through. So we are committed. I hope you guys recognize that our team goes out, and as a lot as you guys know, the conversations aren't always easy, but we are here to listen. We're not here to tell you what's right or wrong. We are here to listen, and the best part about this team is to do. And not that we think, we knew it was the right thing to do. So case in point, roof painting. We had our very first town hall. I don't remember, some of you would have been there. It turned into much of a sounding board for us to listen to what we needed to do better. Not what we could do better, what we needed to do better. So with roof painting, for example, our old process was we had 3 zones. If you lived in this one zone that was closest to BELCO, you got your roof painted every year, 100% payment. If you were in the second zone, you got your roof painted every 2 years at 100% payment. And if you were in the third zone, then you got your roof painted every 2 years at 50% of it because you weren't impacted as much. This program long preceded me, long preceded my colleagues, even those who are in position today. So one of the first things my president did was like, what is it? And told me, is like, what is this craziness? Like, if you're impacted, you're impacted. So right away, the zones got removed from our standard operating procedure one time. And there was no more saying, okay, fine, you've called in, we'll get your roof paints like that. It was, we had to go out and inspect every roof. It was a way for us to connect with you, to get an understanding. It was another way that we could follow up after the roof was done to make sure it was painted properly, to make sure the eaves were done, the valleys, as those had been forgotten in the past by some painters under contract. So one thing that my president, our executive team was very stern on was saying, hey, I don't care if we got a call from Harbor Road, Paget, Warwick, I don't care, go look at it. Which we did, because we got calls from Harbor Road, Warwick, Paget, and we did go look at it. So there's no roof now, or there's no request that is made where we won't visually come see the roof, unless we know that you're one of our very impacted neighbors, because we do know those as well. And while there's no zone, we will work with those ones. We also paint outside of any sort of schedule. So before the 2 years, the 1 year, all of that is done. We will come out, we will look at the property, we will assess and say, okay, let's make this change. We never used to do anything for schools, commercial businesses. A lot of that stuff has changed too. Not because, you want to do that back and forth, very much because it's the right thing to do, right? And, we can attest to that as well. So a lot of that has changed, not just because of the executive that sits behind us, but by the information we get when we go out into the public and we listen to the concerns and the feedback that we get, that we can then take back to make these decisions and make these changes together. So we will continue to do this, but a lot of that has come from you, and our ability to kind of get out with you and to hear these concerns. So I'm going to bring up some data. The top row is roof painting. So you would have seen in 2022, before we had the full optimization, before we started getting to that fuel, and I can also attest, I work very closely with Dan now within my new role, so I actually purchased the fuel, so I can attest to what he's saying when it comes to the blended fuel, because we do pay a blended premium on top of the fuel, so I know that it's an intermediate fuel as opposed to heavy as well. So you can see the numbers are starting to trickle down, 93s, 94s, and what I'm probably most happy about is that these numbers align with numbers from 2010 to 2020, where we were seeing 83 roofs, 94 roofs, 110 roofs in some of the years. So it always used to be a 2-year lull. And what I like most about these numbers is these numbers account for roofs that we've painted outside of that 1 year, 2 year period that we used to. So we are repainting roofs at a much quicker rate. And these numbers now, to me, make a lot more sense because they're actually lower. If we said that you only get your roof painted once a year, these numbers would be even lower than that. So vehicle polishing, I can start to see that the numbers are going down, which might go up a little bit. But tanks cleaned, I can see that those numbers are starting to go down. We've looked at tanks recently. So I want to speak to some of the tanks that we've had. Recently, we said we've conducted water testing. With that water testing, we cleaned 8 tanks. So we wanted to test any sort of sediment. Some of the tanks have been cleaned 2 years, some of them 5 years. In Bermuda, it's required that every 6 years you have your tank cleaned by law, right? But what we did was say, okay, we can get a pretty good survey now and let's check for sediment. Out of the 8 tanks, we were only able to collect this much sediment from 2 of them. The rest of them were completely sediment-free or leaves-clean. So we use James's Water Service if you need a third-party verification on that. But that sediment has also been sent away to Beres Veritas, which is a certified overseas lab, who we also use for water testing as well. So we want to keep up on those efforts that we've already put in place, and that's what we will continue to do. Water filtration systems, like I said, we continue to test water, and I will show you that on the next slide. Water sampling. This is a big one for us, and you'll see it on the next slide. Our operating license mandates that we do 3 tanks a year. Since that requirement has been put on us, we always will exceed that number that the operating license requires because we want the data. We want to know if we are impacting. Once again, this is just science, and I understand this is not enough to say, I see orange on my roof and this could not be in my tank. I get all of that. All right, but we need to do at least what we can do, which is follow the science. So what we have done is within the 5 years, instead of testing 15 tanks, we've tested 65. So 50 more than what we are actually compliance required to do, but we moved on and said, no, we need to do more. So now we have a bigger survey, a bigger sample size, and we will continue to do that testing as well. So 50 more tanks we've tested. So this is part of the 2025 survey. We did 5 tanks. And what we found was one exceedance of the secondary standards for safe drinking water on that. So the secondary standards are to do with taste and aesthetic of the water. The primary drinking standards are to do with health impacts of the water, things that we consider health impacts, okay? So what we found in all of our secondary exceedances is the same as we found in past years. A high amount of aluminum or iron is normally the culprits behind that. And what we can rest easy on is that BIOS in their 2005 island-wide survey had the same findings. They contributed to our natural environment, whether it's the soils that are high, whether it's cast iron piping within the house. So these are things that we will continue to do. We will continue to test as well with that. Labs, all of the water testing, it also should be noted, guys, is done under the direction of the DNR. BIOS collects all the samples, handles all the samples, ships all the samples, and analyzes all the results. We don't touch anything, we just pay for everything, and we get the results back, and the report is written by BIOS. And all of this is under the direction of the DNR. The way that we also collect samples, we've done everything to try to test out any sort of theory. So the very first year, we collected right from the tank. We dipped the raw water source. Now, that wouldn't give you what's at the bottom of the tank or the middle, or the top. That's just where you collect aromatic hydrocarbons. We tested for bacteriological contaminants, and that was the only thing that came back, which is pretty natural for Bermuda, which is E. coli or coliform. And that's why they say, put a little cap full of bleach into your tank at 10,000 gallons, and then basically circulate the water to help kill off any of that bacteriological contamination. So we did that, and the DNR said, all right, we're going to change our testing results. We didn't like there's got to be something wrong with the system. So they said, we're going to collect water from the first tank before the pump and before any sort of filtration system. Okay, so we want to know what's getting pulled into the house. So every house in Bermuda, there's no requirement in planning. You have a foot valve in your tank. That's what pulls the water up into your house. So your foot valve could be at the bottom, your foot valve could be 3 feet up, it could be right over your P-trap within your tank. There's no way for us to control that, not the most scientific means in the world. However, it is a good representation of what can be pulled into the house. So we tested after rain events when you would expect water to be stirred up. We tested during dry periods when you would expect the water to be still within that and everything drop out to the bottom. To date, we still have had no exceedances where there's any sort of, you can go back, Krista, to the other one just now. So we have had some exceedances where you would see these are secondary exceedances with aluminum, and we have had one hit on a primary standard. But what we did under the direction of the DNR is we retested that home, and we retested all the homes within the vicinity to test out, is this a systemic issue? Is this a localized issue? Following retesting, those parameters were no longer present. So there's no exceedances. Every other home around there also experienced no exceedances of any of the standards following that testing. Where we find an issue, you must always test out. That is basic science. You must go out and say, all right, I found it here. Is this localized? Is this systemic? What is the problem here? So we will always continue to do that too. So we'll grab another 10 samples. We'll grab another 5. Whatever it is under the direction of the DNR, we will always continue to do. While, once again, I will say, and I'll finish off with this, guys, while I have to follow the science, while my team has to follow the science, we come to your houses knowing that that's not enough. Knowing that your roof has got orange spots on it. Knowing that, you see this on your walkway as you're walking in. The only comfort that I can have is this is what the science is saying right now. Believe me when I tell you that I didn't take this job. I didn't become a firefighter. I wasn't a personal trainer for elderly population. Or wanted to get into health and safety because I don't care. So, like I said, I understand that the science can't always provide you with comfort, but anything that we can continue to do so, that's what the effort will be pushed towards, is to do that. So I'm going to pass it over. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to give it back to me real quick.
Just before I go, I'd ask you, I didn't acknowledge the presence of Minister Jason here, but I apologize for doing so. I'd just like to acknowledge formally and thank you for coming, Minister. I apologize for not doing so at the beginning.
Thank you. And hello, Mr. Hayes. How are you? I'm going to pass it over now to Jeff, who probably has the most exciting part of our presentation, one that even I'm waiting for. So I'll pass it over to Jeff for our transition.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome this evening. Hear a lot about the science and what's going on day to day, second by second, making sure that BELCO delivers the energy that the island needs. We have a team, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I kind of call them the Geek Squad. We're looking into the future. We're looking at global trends. We are trying to figure out what is the right technology, What is the right fuel? What is the best pathway for Bermuda? And here you have the preferred portfolio that we put out in the IRP. That is the Integrated Resource Plan. Integrated Resource Plan is basically the menu of food you're going to eat for the next 20 years. That's what it is. We are choosing what technology for the next 20 years is going to be the one to give us the lowest cost, the reliability we rely on, and the sustainable targets that we want to hit. And that is a balance we need to achieve. On the top here, you can see additions. Now you probably can't read the words, but you can see that's a sun. BELCO is saying that Bermuda would serve best if we got another 20 megawatts of solar in the next 4 years. Wind turbines, battery energy storage, floating solar, more floating solar. We have 21 square miles. We are in the top 10 most densely populated countries in the world. We do not have space to meet the energy needs of Bermuda with the land that we have. We need to go onto the ocean as well. Even with 200 megawatts on the roofs, every roof covered, it's still not enough. We are hugely dense. And you see it continues, solar, battery, solar, battery. On the bottom, you have the retirees, okay? The engines that we retire. We're going to lose GT5 this year. We will replace that. But there's no replacements for these engines that retire. And by the time we get to 2046, half of the engines in BELCO are retired. Okay? We do have a plan. When I went away to university and studied to renewable energy to come back home to put it to use to help do this, I had a lot of fun. I traveled all over the world. But I never realized that the answer was there in front of us. I always thought solar on the roof was enough. It's not. We need others. Someone said it earlier, it was Dan. You stand behind a truck, it starts up, and that soot that comes out from just a regular truck. BELCO's engines are like 1,000 trucks in one, in terms of power. Well, if we continue to burn intermediate fuel, as I learned tonight, there's so many types of fuels, don't get me wrong, there's a lot, you can buy all different types of blends. If we switch fuels to light fuel oil, as is shown in this preferred plan, at the time when we were told we could not burn natural gas, if we switch to light fuel oil, we minimize that risk every time the engines start up. You might say, well, why do we need to start up the engines? We got all this sun and we got all this battery. Think about August, when it's hot and cloudy, no wind for a few weeks, and the batteries are discharged. It's 8 o'clock at night, and you want your air conditioning, and we need to start up all the engines. We, as an isolated island in the middle of the Atlantic, need that backup. When we start up those engines, because I don't know how to start them, if I'm honest. If we start up those engines and they're running on oil, fuel oil, they will be more dirty than if every time we start them up on LNG, liquid natural gas. And if we do it now, we go to the next slide, we still have time to make sure that we're not locked in for too long. Actually, it would have been better if we'd have done this 10 years ago. And we always kick the can. It's time to really evaluate what is that right path. If the wind energy doesn't come to fruition in Bermuda, why not use a fuel that saves 25% carbon reduction today? Like as soon as you install natural gas, 25% carbon reduction. We want sustainability, it's about the carbon. So we wouldn't buy the LNG plant. We talk about BELCO once. It's actually not going to be BELCO's plant. Okay? It would be somebody else's. It would fuel our engines, and it would be cleaner. Less carbon, and guess what? Cheaper. So, here we said, all right, we can write a plan. If you imagine you chose the menu for the week, right? What you're going to eat for next week, I would change my mind by tomorrow. Something new would come up, there'd be a new thing. We have a whole bunch of pivot strategies in the integrated resource plan. If, for example, the fuel cost goes high, or the headwinds of onshore solar, we can't find space on land, choose a different pathway. And we have here a pathway based on decisions. Does offshore wind work? If not, look at LNG. If it does work, stay with LFO. We're already seeing delays. This is all in the integrated resource plan. It is not a team of people sitting there going, oh, I think this is good, I think that's good. It is maths, it is science. It is every hour of every day for the next 20 years put into a computer, coming back out with a plan. And every plan says batteries and solar. We have to do that first. Then we have time to make some decisions. And the longer and longer we leave the development of the renewables and the batteries, the more and more the clean fuels make sense. Because I'll be honest, renewables for every hour of every day is hard. It's not going to be easy as just running your engine. You all have generators, maybe in a hurricane, you start it up, it just runs, right? Doesn't work like that with solar and batteries. Not all the way through the night. So I would urge you to go online to the RA's website. The Integrated Resource Plan draft is up there. It's extremely long. There's an executive summary. There's pictures there. We do have a plan. We need to go forward with something that works for Bermuda. And like I said, the recent talks in LNG, methanol, we're always looking for the right answer. So we welcome back to Wayne. And questions at the end.
Just before we go to the questions, I would like to thank, and this is not the end, but I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I'm looking at Ms. Pereira. I have a alert on my phone, right, for your email. Absolutely. And so when you send out an email when things on your roof, it's critical to us. So when I see your email, you can bet your boots. If it's 10 o'clock at night, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, our team gets in, you ask them. They get an email, and I say to you guys, listen, I'm looking at Ms. Riviera. She keeps my foot to the fire. No matter where I go, she could see me at church, she could see me on the street, she could see my mother, she could see my daddy, she could see my cat. She's going to tell them this is what Mr. Keynes needs to do. And she does it anytime she sees me, anytime she sees somebody in our community. She holds us accountable. And guess what? Here's the truth. I actually appreciate it. I appreciate how when she sees me, when she sees our team, when it was time to put her money where her mouth is, she stood up on that street in rain, blew inside. She stood there for 3 days, standing and representing the people in this community. 2.5 weeks ago, I had a meeting with Harry and Glenn, and there were no hugs and cuddles and kisses in the meeting. They were very, very robust in sharing what they wanted for their company and how our actions were impacting the country. When you come into this room, there's a lot of science here. The team is sharing that they care, but everybody said the same thing. That does not account for opening up your door, looking on your car, spending all these money to bring cars in, looking at your driveway, looking at your roof, and these things are stained. That is not something that is lost on us. If you get one thing from this conversation, this is not an organization of people that take that for granted or think that we're doing all that we can and that the people in our community do not matter. That is not correct. We could have had this online. We have to look at you in the eye and say, we understand that any inconvenience on your life, on your business, that it impacts you, it is untenable. It's something that we know that nobody wants to live in. I grew up on Happy Valley and Parsons Road when Pembroke Dump was right there. I understand what that's like. Some mornings that smell, and I played at the desert next to Victor Scott School Field, right? They're growing up in that environment. It is not lost on me that people do not want to hear these conversations, that they want to see and feel that the impact's being made. What I wanted to do for you tonight is a few things. I wanted to show you that since 2020, not only have we put money on to try to fix it, the team has been working feverishly to do so, and I believe that we've made progress. I am not saying that we are where we want to be. I am saying that the team has made progress. When it comes to responding, making sure that we're getting the roofs painted and we're getting the cars fixed, I want you to know that it was too difficult to happen before. You have to pay it and get reimbursed. We knew that was, when we heard from the community, we knew that was not acceptable. I've asked the team to make it as easy and seamless as possible. Shane is a young man, just come back from university. He's committed to what he's doing. Hannah, these are young Bermudians. And guess what? They don't get hugs and cuddles when they come to the houses either. But every day they lace up their boots, they do it, and they go, and they know that when they go to people's houses that they're frustrated and they're angry, but they're still going to do it every time to try to make things better. When you hear about what the future is concerned, I actually do not want to think that we are trying to give you a 6 for a 9. There is a plan for the future with the ERP. When every time somebody says 2045, it actually makes my stomach hurt. That is the last thing any human being wants to hear about, is what's going to happen in 2045. Yes, it's absolutely. But guess what he has to do? What I want the team to be able to do, I asked Dan, don't tell me you're going to fix it. And I go to this community and say it's going to be done in 3 months and it's not done. Do everything in your power and let's have an honest conversation, so we are not saying to people, we're going to fix this in 3 years and we're not. When the engines are working, they're working really well right now. Diana said something, and I have to put it in. I'm not an engineer. The engine sputter on startup when they start the engines back up. Yes? There's also a problem that we can go for months. I was looking at the numbers. There are months where we go, and there are no complaints. We think, yes, this thing's going in the right direction. The wind shifts, and guess what? We understand that based on the wind patterns, that when the wind shifts, that we have exceedances on people's houses. So I've said to the team, listen, what do we do to fix it? What is the fix? Stop with all this. How do we fix this tomorrow? Eugene, when we're talking about, I read the piece in the newspaper today. When we're talking about LNG, we're never saying that LNG is a fix for all of the problems. We're saying that, right, there is a plan for the future. What I wanted the doc to go through is to share with you, we actually believe in wind. We actually believe in battery storage. We actually believe in storage, in solar. We believe all of those things should be brought in together for Bermuda Incorporated, so we have a much more sustainable country. But more important, what we want to do is figure out the quickest route for us to stop using the fuel that is causing the exceedings of people's homes. And that's what we need to talk about, the cost of fuel and the type of fuel. And so when we say LNG and we say the cost of fuel, those are two things to the LNG process and to the national fuel policy that we have to talk to the RA, we have to talk to the respective ministers and give them what we believe the options are to fix this in the future. That's not going to be easy, and that's not going to happen overnight. So what I have to share with everyone, that the challenge is, we've highlighted that these are the challenges right now, and a lot of them center around the type of fuel, the cost of fuel. What is the long-term fix? The long-term fix, as you saw, is the IRP, and that gives you what the energy mix will look like over a period of time. But guess what? That does not make everybody in the room feel that the problem is going to be fixed tomorrow. There is a problem, and it remains a problem, and we have things that we're working on, and we have to do it in a stepped approach. But in the period in between that, we have to focus on quick responses, making sure we do everything in our power to make sure that the fuel and our startups are done systematically to limit the impact that we have on everybody's homes. Yes? I have to look everybody in the room and say, number one, I get it. When I get an email from you, I light my team up. When Miss Riviera comes, I tell everybody. She saw two of our guys that helped her cross the street at Marketplace. She told them about their cotton picking selves, right? And they came in, they said, listen, they saw Miss Riviera on the street, two guys that work in the plant, and she cut their tail, right? Yes.
And the fact that they were that way.
Yes.
It's a good call.
Yes. Well, you said some other thing. Yes. She said some other things too. Let's just leave it that she said some. Let's just leave it that she said some other things. But that's the point. The point is, I don't want everybody looking at Miss Riviera as if Miss Riviera is a problem to BELCO. She is our community partner. She has every right to be messed up. She has every right to be annoyed. And I don't want you to think that because you're angry, we take it personally. We've realized that in this community, we have to do better. Every time we leave this room, I have to go back to this team and say, what can we do more to make it better? Right? Mr. Smith and Harry, you guys met with you. You shared with us what your preferred solution is. There was a part of it that we didn't agree with. I don't want to walk away from the table with you guys. I want to go back in and I want to keep working so we could try to find a solution. We did not leave with the perfect solution for everybody, but I don't want you to think that we don't care and that we're not going to keep working. We will. Yes? And so a part of us having this conversation tonight is that there are things that we've inherited, and I will accept full responsibility for it, as will my team. We will continue to work, and I want to give you the opportunity to ask the questions. And again, we will stay around for 25 minutes to 30 minutes, and you literally just go up to whoever you want to talk with on the team, and they will stay here and answer your specific questions about the part of the business that you want to talk with them. I'm going to give it to Krista now, and Krista's and the respective person will come and answer it.
The first question is, why hasn't BELCO begun to transition to wind, solar, or alternative forms of energy? The RA has stated that there is a scope for transitioning to start now.
So the integrated resource plan that BELCO produced in 2023 is still under review. And when that is approved in whatever form, then through the Electricity Act, BELCO will go out and procure through a public procurement process that resource. There has been a challenge with finding a lease for the seabed for wind farms. There's been a challenge with finding land on the island. There's a ministerial directive about not using green spaces. So it really comes down to the island that we love and how do we minimize the impact by deploying solar and wind and not impacting negatively the environment. So you don't want to lose a car park. You would like to lose a car park, not a park. And you don't want to kill a coral reef. You want to use a dredged area next to the airport, for example. So we have to get a policy in place.
Why don't we use more solar now? So you're saying that solar's an option. Why don't we use more solar so we use less electricity? That's what they're asking.
I know, said where are you going to put it? Where,
Can we put it on the solar finger? And every single building on the island?
may I answer that? So we can, there's potential for a little more addition to the solar finger. It's not owned by BELCO. If they want to invest in that, they can. They go through the regulatory process. If they want to put it around the airport, I would highly recommend that. There's a lot of green space around the airport. And then, what was the second part? Rooftops.
Government buildings, hospitals, and that sort of thing.
So it's quite a long piece, but if you use every rooftop in the island, it's 200 megawatts. That would power at that instantaneous point in time, at 12 o'clock in the day would be fine. It wouldn't be there at night. And you have like 8 hours in the day of sunlight and 16 hours of darkness. So 200 battery storage, but still with all that solar, it's not enough. Now, government can go out there and put solar on those buildings, but if government solar is on those buildings and they're self-consuming it, then they are actually looking after those buildings, and the rest of the people on the grid that don't have solar will have to foot those fixed costs. So we need to look at it as a community solar, where government buildings have solar, it feeds into the grid, and it goes to all your homes rather than just to government buildings. And that way we share the costs as an island, not just as looking after our own. And that's very, very important.
So you mentioned that. Sarah, you can actually talk to you one-on-one afterwards. You can talk to you one-on-one.
Jeff, stay, don't go. You mentioned earlier tonight that the longer it takes for renewables to come online, the more viable it is to switch to a cleaner fuel. Is BELCO not planning to invest in renewables? Do you feel the decision to move forward with wind or other options is in the hands of others to deploy?
Two hidden questions there. BELCO's job is to go out and procure the resources according to the IRP. And there is a bulk procurement generation rules within other jurisdictions and other authorities. So as a country, we do need to identify whose responsibility it is to buy those resources. That doesn't mean to go out and, like BELCO would pay for it or this person would pay for it. You go out to international partners that would come in and bid to build a project, much like the Finger was done. That's the only way to do wind on this island. And so the question is it in the hands of others? It's something that we need an energy policy for, the RA position, and then BELCO to go and deliver. And that is the cheapest way to do it, rather than it being done through like in complete independent parties, and it's about a utility perspective that shares that. Now, what I mean is, if everyone had it all for themselves, there's going to be a few left behind. So if we can get the energy policy correct, if we can get the IRP in place, then we have a plan and we can go act, and it has to be achievable.
The next question is about LNG and the cost to build an LNG plant. So I will let Nadir answer this one.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about LNG. Estimated costs about 250 to 350 million. Again, that's high level estimates. That plant, an LNG plant, will likely not be owned by BELCO. So there's that whole myth and legend about BELCO just wants to build another plant and get more profits and this, that, and the other. Bollocks, right? Has nothing to do with BELCO. Right now, we don't own the fuel tanks down at Ferry Reach. That's owned by a different company. We accept the fuel, we burn the fuel, and we produce electricity.
Jeff, this one's for you. Can you place solar panels on telephone poles throughout the island that can assist in producing electricity at peak hours of the day, reducing the land and engine generation outputs? And also, this is the second part. There are underwater currents in various locations in Bermuda. Underwater turbines can be placed in those locations.
So I love underwater turbines. I spent 4 years building a world-class facility in Scotland for testing tidal turbines. And when I realized that Flats Bridge was no good and couldn't even power like one dryer at the aquarium or one fish tank, I realized I was going down the wrong pathway because we don't have that natural resource. You've got to use your own talents. Bermuda's talent is not current. It is not power that flows in the sea. Waves may be a different story, but if anyone's seen a boat after it comes out of the water after a year, imagine a device underwater for 20 years making electricity, you take it back out. That is a maintenance nightmare. So I dedicated my PhD to ocean energy, and I'll be honest with you, the technology's not ready yet. We don't want to waste Bermuda's money investing in a technology that's not ready. Now, the telephone poles. Okay, we've got like 4,000 transformers, so say there's 3 poles, there's like 12,000 poles on the island, 3 poles between transformers. So just roughly guess 12,000 poles on the island. One solar panel on top of that pole. If it didn't turn into a kite, I would then say we might make a little bit of power from that. That's not how they're typically deployed. I would say it's much better to use the flat ground, the concrete bases, and put them around the airport. We need to do what's easy first, and Bermuda's got to get out of its own way.
What happens when there's a hurricane?
A hurricane, when the solar panel's on the pole? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would not put the solar panel on a pole. I'd put the solar panel on an angle, connected to concrete or to the foundation, as low to the ground as possible, just like the finger. You can go on Google Earth, you can pan to the airport and you can see the finger. It looks great. We need more like that in that whole area.
Thank you. What is the cost associated with burning a lighter fuel?
I'll take it just as a high level. Basically, we have lighter fuel. We have it in our engines now. We burn in our gas turbines. We also burn in our engines to start up the engines. But burning a lighter fuel, we know is more costly for the customers, probably by about 30 to 40% more costly. So we spend our time being efficient and only using that resource when it's absolutely necessary in very limited means in order to be able to provide an efficient operation that impacts the customer on cost. So yes, we can burn a lighter fuel oil. We mentioned that. We can do that tomorrow, but it'll be more costly for the customers. So we don't think that's a good solution for today.
Mark, if fallout is to be expected, can you clearly explain to residents what are the options to get their homes and properties restored?
Sure. As Krista talked about, we do have a My Concerns page. A lot of you probably also have our direct numbers at this point, or you also have the ability to call BELCO 295-5111 and ask for the OHSE team. You can also email us at ohse@belco.bm, and we will immediately pop out, one of our environmental technicians, Cassie or myself, will pop out, look at the associated impacts, and then schedule some sort of remediation. One of the things that has changed as well is where you might not know a contractor for that specific type of remediation, then we can provide some suggestions for you as well. We just want to make sure at the end of the day that you're happy with the product and the area has been restored before we make any sort of payment towards that contractor.
If BELCO is supposed to be taking a proactive approach to mitigation efforts, why do residents have to submit an email application for routine roof, vehicle, and/or tank cleaning?
So for us, it also aids us in capturing records. So we have a system called Survey 123 that we use, that we recently just brought online. It works off of ArcGIS systems, which enables us to kind of map where these impacts are. So we can tell frequency, we can create a log for that home, we understand the request based off of that home. Okay, we've been painting this one every 4 months, we've been painting this one every 8 months. It also allows us to demonstrate any sort of improvement. It allows us to measure wind conditions. It allows us just to get more data in to drive decision making at the end of the day.
What do we do to address noise and vibrations that transmit to the north of Langton Hill, or the north way through Langton Hill?
So we have noise monitoring equipment that we're able to deploy on site, whether we can take spot measurements, we can leave a piece of equipment there. We also have the same for vibration. Where you believe these things exist, you can once again just call email OHSE at BELCO, use the My Concerns page on the website, call us directly, and we can deploy that equipment. We measure vibration, we measure noise. One of the best parts about the North Power Station as well is the system itself. We did used to have vibrational impacts from our older engines, E1 and E2. They were a lot bigger. You had to sync them up. The newer ones are on a very different system that helps with that vibration a lot. But where you feel that you are getting that, please let us know. We can obviously come out, monitor, measure.
How do we get tank sediment checked and or sampled?
Okay, so with tank sediment, we would hire a contractor. Contractor basically disposes of the water that's within that water tank. We then would collect any sediment that sits on the bottom of that tank or within the P-traps themselves. So if you have a P-trap within your tank that's designed to basically catch sediment, once we transfer water either to one side of the tank to the other or pump it all out on that, we can then collect the sediment. The sediment gets collected in sample jars. Shane recently just did this for us, collect the sample jars with the assistance of our water tank cleaner, who's done this for us for many years. We collect samples and we ship them overseas to an accredited lab, Bureau Veritas. They do water analysis, sediment analysis. We test for leachability. So we also want to see, is there any part of that sediment that has the potential to leach into the water column, or does it dissolve into the water column? So these are all things that we've done and will continue to do as well.
In regards to the decline in mitigation efforts, could part of it be to residents having to undergo more hurdles to submit a complaint or request? The average amount of complaints has remained an average of 78. However, compensation cases are steadily declined, indicating that residents' complaints are not being adequately addressed. Why is this so?
So we continue to listen to every complaint, and this is where sometimes it's hard for us because we have to look at the roof. Everyone in this room who's been impacted by BELCO knows the impact signs. You know to look at the orange spots on your roof. BELCO does not contribute to black roofs. While we do emit smoke, that's not what impacts your roof. It could be algae on your roof, it could be these other things. But what we do is we don't just take that and say, hey, there's no impact. Where we see a dirty roof or a black roof and we don't see any orange spots, we just ask that person, look, can you provide some power washing? That's the first step in dealing with that roof anyway. We will come back and reassess it. Where we see the orange spots, we will pay for the power washing, we will pay for the roof, we will do all of that. And in most times, we will go back twice, 3 times, we give second opinions, third opinions, we'll fly a drone to get more pictures. So we're always looking. And we try to take every concern, but we also cannot just paint every roof if we don't have the impacts on it. Everyone knows what the impacts look like, and we also provide picture evidence of what to look for in impacts. And even if they've got the roof painted and it's 3 days later and you believe you've been impacted, we will come back. We will always come back, and we will always be ready to take another look.
While air emissions are within legal limits and the plant is operating on par with other parts of its kind, how many other plants operate in immediate proximity to residential areas?
Yeah, so I think, so when I was in school, I thought that I said I wanted to study power systems engineering, utilities. What I found out immediately was that most power plants are way tucked off, way in the boonies, in the US and Canada. You know, Bermuda is very densely populated. We don't shy away from that. Most power plants, you know, are not so close to a community. Again, this plant has been here in different evolutions for over 100 years. Someone recently said to me, well, just pick up the plant and move it. That is not a realistic solution. And for me to try to pacify and think that that is a possible solution, then I'll be doing disservice to the community. The reality is that we're a very densely populated island, very small. We don't have a lot of land, and that's also becoming a problem in terms of executing on our renewable strategy as a country as well. So it's not just a fossil fuel problem, it's also an energy transition challenge, I would say. And then, you know, but we're here to meet the opportunity.
This question was just addressed, but I'll just acknowledge it. That was to move the plant to Ferry Reach for pumping and fuel purposes. Why wasn't that done? So the chair just addressed that one. The second part of this first question was, heavy fuel oil is cheaper but dirtier. Light fuel is costlier but cleaner. Despite BELCO using a blended fuel, there has not been a significant decline in residential complaints. But at the same time, there has not been any reprieve in consumer costs, i.e. in the power bills. Why is that?
So I believe the question is, we're using an intermediate blender, we're using a blended fuel. Why haven't we seen any sort of improvements within it? So we're also based on the cost of fuel, of oil, around the world, which is a very volatile commodity. Think about a stock that's going up and down. This is much more volatile than that, than investing in an individual stock. I can speak to the program. Yeah, so we also have implemented a hedging program for forward purchases. And we are starting to see the fruits of that. So going back in, forward purchasing fuel, and then purchasing percentages of that fuel at different times. So it's like dollar cost averaging if you were investing in a stock. So when we invest, we have different parameters that we would be doing and purchasing different amounts of that next shipment that's coming in. We're also looking at working with our partners down at Seoul to bring some more relief to the fuel prices and stuff within that.
What Mark is talking about, the let's just say the fuel management program that we have, basically in terms of trying to buy fuel at a cheaper price on the international market. Probably about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, maybe before BELCO entered into. The timing was right, the market was right, there was no wars, there was no COVID, there was no supply chain issues, all the things that are impacting the global economy, right? There might have been things going on, but the market was ripe many years ago for us to enter into long-term contract. And without being said, Bermuda actually benefited from BELCO getting into the market, locking in a long-term contract that lasted for about 3 to 5 years that really kept, I would say, the fuel part of the pricing very non-volatile, I would say. It just so happened that, wars came, COVID came, supply chain issues came, and all these things came, and they came at a very inopportune time when ultimately that those contracts expired. When those contracts expire, you don't just pick up those contracts and say, hey, give me yesterday's price. You deal with the global economy and whatever that price is, and that's why they talk about the volatility of the fuel market. To which not just Bermuda, but most island nations are actually dealing with as a challenge, because we're very small island nations with not a big population having to deal with this significant volatility. And that's why we want to move to the energy transition. That's a piece of it. Shally, you want to answer something?
I was just going to add that the FAR is set on a quarterly basis, and just to give you guys a flavor, the FAR for this quarter has just been set as 2 cents down from the previous quarter. So it was at about 15.5 cents per kilowatt hour. It has gone down to about 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour for this quarter coming up.
The next is an opinion that I'm going to let Wayne address. It says, I do not care that BELCO is a community focus. I believe that all employees are compensated. So now we just need to face reality that the problems are not going away. So there needs to be financial compensation for those issues totally. The right thing to do in regards to property damage, water, purchasing, plus what you are already doing.
I think perspectives are very important. I think everybody has the right to say that they should be compensated for the inconvenience. And I believe that is perspective, and that's a perspective that I respect. I have a different view of it, and I don't agree with that specific perspective. What I've asked the team to do now is to identify what the issues are, to make sure that we remediate them in a specific amount of time, and at the appropriate time, when we have the ability to do so, we will ultimately swap out and do a different type of fuel, and so we can control what the future looks like. There is something that we use that's called a rate case that sets the fuel policy and the cost of fuel and how we do business, and everything that we do has to fit in a particular rate case, and we do not believe that to simply say to term plan to fix it. And I know that that does not appease everyone. There is no opportunity in the RA process for us to give away electricity, that there is no mechanism under the law where we can do that. And so there are opportunities for us to look at our exceedancies, how we do business, and then if we make a decision and our exceedancies go beyond a specific point, there is a mechanism with the amendments to the Clean Air Act that we are fined significantly with a specific amount of fines that has been recently in an amended law. There are mechanisms in place if we exceed specific things that we are heavily fined. Yes? And so we follow what the law says. We understand what our exceedancies are. But again, I cannot sit here and say that what everybody is feeling is inconsequential and it doesn't matter. I can simply say, I cannot stand in front of you tonight and ensure compensation to the neighbors. I cannot make that assurance.
Why did BELCO configure our engines for LNG before the completion of the IRP?
So when we talk about the optimization, and this has been a sticking point, and sometimes we even miscommunicated. When we say optimize for this and optimize that, we're talking about two components in the engine, right? Mainly the piston crowns, which are one component that we had to change, right? In terms of optimizing something for fuel or something for gas, right? And then there's another phase of the plant that has a whole litany of components that will change our engines to be able to 100% accept gas. The reason why you have that change is because gas comes with other requirements, not the same as running basically fuel. So when we say optimize, everyone thinks that we had a million things that we didn't do this way and a million things that we didn't do that way, and that basically it's a bunch of clowns running BELCO, right? That is not the case. Ultimately, what you had was a situation where we had a piston crown, right, of which we changed, right, that was fitted for gas that once we took the engine, we realized we're burning fuel and we need to change this piston crown. And that's the work that we did. But that work was always phased into the fact in case we basically never got natural gas and that we would have to move in that direction. Really, we thought that we've always felt that natural gas is a solution for Bermuda, right? And the idea was, well, you can pay, the country can pay, or the customers can pay more money for us to retrofit, or we can make some small changes up front that will save the customers money in the long run. So that was the thinking. So it wasn't an untoward decision or a horrible decision or a non-thought out decision. It was a strategic decision where we ended up having to change one or two components in those engines in order to basically get a better result, mainly for the impact that it was having on the community. So what I mean by that is that had we kept that piston crown the way it was, and it wasn't having a significant impact on the community to the extent to which it was having in 2020, we wouldn't have changed it. So when we say this whole idea of optimizing or not optimizing, it was a matter of we realized that it was having a more significant impact than we thought on the community that was basically even a little bit abnormal even for us. And that's why we made the change. So I want to be clear on that because there's been a lot of confusion around that. But our plant, we know if we go to natural gas, there are still more things that we need to do to fit it for gas. And that comes with all the safety requirements and all the fittings that are required.
Can I add two things?
You can, and then I would like you to address why we do not use scrubbers.
So you've heard him mention at the time that we made the decision to optimize for gas, LNG optimize for gas at the time that we made the decision. After we made that decision, a few months later, the fuel policy eliminated LNG. So now we ended up having some issues and we had to fast forward the investment, but had gas, with the information we had in 2018, had gas showed up on island by 2025, it would have been more cost effective for the customers for us to have made the decision to optimize for gas. You know? So at the time the decision was made, it was the right decision to make. Pardon me? Yeah, why don't we use scrubbers? Scrubbers are designed to remove sulfur from the gas, from the exhaust. We don't have a sulfur problem here. We burn very low sulfur fuel, under 2%. Scrubbers exist in the marine industry for ships that burn heavy fuel at 4% plus sulfur. So the scrubber captures the sulfur out of the exhaust, you know, and it becomes a byproduct that they have to get rid of. We don't have a sulfur problem here.
So there were high exceedance, there were high levels of sulfur detected in monitoring equipment, is that correct?
No.
So you don't have any, you do have sulfur in the heavy fuel oil?
Yeah, it's below 2%.
Dan, can I repeat questions to people who want to hear?
Yeah, why are we not using scrubbers? Oh, do we have sulfur exceed?
I believe that there were some high levels of sulfur found in the monitor.
You want to speak to that one?
So when we had those exceedances prior to the full retrofits that were in there, there were on Ocean Lane. Those were exceedances due to the UK target limit values, which have since been adopted in Bermuda, just waiting for the passing of the legislation. They've been actually set as, while they're target values for the UK, they're actually set standards for us here in Bermuda. To date, you're permitted 35 exceedances of that 15-minute standard before you reach a full exceedance of that standard. We still measure this now at our active monitoring stations, and I think we've had one for this year thus far. Of that 15-minute standards. Yes, so the fuel that we burn is below 2%. That's governed by our operating license. So our fuel oil has to be 2% or our diesel has to be below 0.5%, and it's actually 0.00015% that we burn. So with wind patterns and changes, we are able, as Dan said, to make those changes within the engines to reduce any sort of sulfur that might be in there, but we don't traditionally have struggles with that. It might be on a downdrafting effect, if that's that.
So it's right to say you're not burning heavy fuel or oil anymore, it's a blended.
So it's always been a blend. It's just been marketed as on maybe to our own detriment on our site. But like I said, it's a blended fuel that comes from Shell. I know because we pay a blend premium for our fuel. So it's not, if we were burning oil, like crude and those things, we'd be paying a lot less for electricity than we are now, if that's fair.
All right, so one second. We're coming to, just want to go to two questions there.
Here comes.
Do we talk about the volatility of LNG prices?
Sure, it's a lot less volatile, I'll say, than where we are with fuel. We're trying to take the volatility out of it, and that's one thing I said, Joran, when I was able to speak. That's why I truly appreciate this team. Everyone has a role to play in this community and the neighboring community, and one of the biggest things that my senior director was all about was like, we need to take the volatility out of it, which is why the fuel program was introduced. So, like I said, we're quite fortunate to have the team that we have, and you see a lot of them sitting here as well for that.
What changes would you like to make to lessen your impact on public health?
So, this is probably the hardest question for me. And this is where I talked about the science versus how people feel, and I would never take that away from anyone. If you feel that our operations have caused illness, then point us in the direction. The only thing I can say is, if this was the case and there was mass illness, I know for a fact the Ministry of Health would be on me. I know the minister well. I also know a lot in the industry, but that doesn't discount what people are going through or what they feel. Where it's necessary, of course, we'll conduct more health surveys. We do conduct the ambient air quality testing. We test it even within our own plant, the workers who are most direct. We will test indoor air quality here because we need to protect them as well. We test welders. We do all of these things. But where that is, please forward that to OHSC. Like I said, we also work with DNR. DNR also has some new things for nuisances and odors that they're going to be doing and looking at as well. And where we do need to change, then obviously we would make those changes. So it's not what we need to change, but if there's a need for a change, we will make those adjustments.
Last one, sorry. On the paper end. Do we agree that an effective town hall is one that is balanced, interactive, and allows attendees to feel valued and heard? And do we think that residents do feel valued and heard?
I think having it interactive, it is important. And I believe that this was interactive. I think trying to manage this and having gone to forums before, it has the potential to devolve. I think we have the opportunity now at seeing the temperature in the room to take some questions from the floor. And I think that everyone's voice is important. Having this interactive, it is important, but it was very important to us that we had a level of decorum in the room, and we felt it important to do it this way. And I know everybody didn't like it, but I stand behind the decision to do so, and I appreciate you coming here. Yes, ma'am, your question?
What is the tax that gets paid on fuel?
The tax that gets paid on fuel.
My name is Joe Barboza. I'm the Senior Director of Finance here at Liberty or BELCO. As many of you know, because you'll see it on your bill, it's part of the FAR, the fuel adjustment rate. A component of the fuel adjustment rate is the tax that's levied on the importation of fuel. You will have seen the government reduce over the period of about the last 9 months to a year, systematically reducing that tax. That has been passed on directly to the customer through the bill. I think Shelley mentioned in the last quarter, or the quarter that we're now in, starting October 1st, you would have seen your FAR go down from 15.5 cents to, I think, 13.5, 2 cents per kilowatt hour cheaper on your bill commencing October 1st. That is that's a combination of lower price of fuel, but I'd say the bigger component is the reduction in the tax in the fuel. And I just want to clarify, because we talked about the volatility in the FAR, the fuel adjustment rate, the forward purchase of fuel. our philosophy when it comes to the purchase of fuel, and particularly with hedging, we talk about hedging. What we're really doing is buying our fuel, our forward needs, our future needs of fuel at prescribed prices. So I can't tell you that it's going to be cheaper. What I can tell you is we're reducing the volatility. And what Bermudians complained about maybe 2 years ago was the volatility, the spikes. Yes, there were some dips, but there were more spikes. And the community didn't like that volatility. And so we thought long and hard about what's the best way to manage it. We can't predict the fuel price. We can't predict global economic circumstances. We can't predict war in the Middle East. We can't predict all of that. But what we can do is certainly buy some of our needs forward and reduce some of that volatility. And that's what you're gonna see going forward. Hopefully less peaks and valleys and more stability in the fuel price.
Any more questions from the floor? Any other questions?
Open the airways is one of our community coalition. Taking voluntarily, the legacy at one of our River Clean Air Coalition meetings, Open Air said very clearly they were seeing a spike among young people, respiratory challenges and so on, from this area. Now, that concerns us, of course. We don't know what the implications are from a health perspective. I know I've gotten ill. My husband, we've all gotten ill. I don't know, not we've all, but my family has. And we believe it's directly related to our quality of the air and everything. The stench that comes, you say it was redirected. I don't know where you redirected it, but by God, excuse me. If I'm sitting out on my little white chair, there are times I have a kerchief with cologne. And then I run inside and I realize, that it's coming through the vents, it's coming through everywhere. So probably I call it the silent killer. Now, I believe that my impact on health and my husband's impact, he's allergic, is directly related to what is happening. Now, I realize that you were here, our homestead, our Desmond homestead was built in 1912. Okay. When I heard them say, well, you knew that you lived in an industrial area, who had the nerve to say that? Was it you?
Yes.
Yes, and I thought, well, ridiculous, anyway, we'll talk about that sometime. But, but in reality, my grandparents, Albert and Ida Desmond, it was 1912. Okay. I heard that those homes that are over here near the grave, that there were people who died from cancer. All of these research things about health. So we don't know. I watched Salter's garden, and I said, my goodness, why are they putting a garden there when there's residue coming? I don't know the impact. Do you know I stopped eating the loquats? I chased the kids away from eating the loquats in the yard, all the cherries, because I don't know what implication it has in respect to that. So from a health perspective, I'm 80. As I said, I've lived a great life. But there are young people being impacted, and all the schools we have in the area, unless you can prove to me that this is not hurting them, then I just don't believe it. It has to have an impact on health.
So first off, Mrs. Rivera, thank you very much. One thing I am committed to doing, and I'll speak to my team, is I want to reach out to Open Airways. I can obviously CC in. But I want to, any sort of data that we can collect is obviously always helpful for us. So if they have that information and they're willing to share, they're willing to sit down with us, then we can set a plan to say, okay, what additional measuring and monitoring needs to be done. We still have another monitoring station, that's a portable monitoring station, that can be set up and established anywhere. Maybe it's on Barkley Field, maybe it's on Soltis Field, maybe those things, but we can collect and gather that information through the air. So following this, as of tomorrow, we will reach out to Open Airways to ask, is there any sort of information we can get? The cancer part is a bit more tricky, just because of cancer in its nature. I also reached out 3 years ago, maybe 4 after our first town hall, because it really impacted me as well. So I reached out to the Tumor Society here in Bermuda and asked for all the data. I would like them to run the data, because me running the data is not going to be as useful, right? Like having them run the data, having them do the analysis, but they have it by parish, they have it by type, they have it by PO box. They have all that information there. And that's where like reports and all that type of stuff will be helpful. But I will reach out to Open Airways, because children is also obviously near and dear. I'm a father, right? And we have the school. So we do have a portable monitoring station. You normally want to set it up into areas where you would expect that impact. However, it doesn't hurt for us to monitor additionally anyway, right? But that would have to be done under the approval, so I can also speak to the DNR, and we'll be proactive on our end to do that. So as of tomorrow, like I said, we will reach out to Open Airways, we'll CC in, just so you're aware, and then we can collect and gather that data, maybe work with them, maybe use their expertise, they can lean on ours as well.
I think that Ms. Riviera, you've raised points around health. We're not going to sit here and simply try to debunk anything. Mark is correct. We need to test more, and we need to look at it scientifically to make sure that we understand what's going on, and if it indeed is a challenge, for us to look at how we deal with it. But we have to ramp up our testing and make it more determined, so we can look at specific things around the health challenges, to either rule it out or to deal with it if that is indeed the case. But we have to look at more testing, and to do so systematically. One more question? Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Have you made any impact, any studies on thermal energy? Is going to be a lot of
Thermal energy?
You mean like geothermal?
Geothermal.
Yeah. So with geothermal situations, you normally have like lava and a heat source with some limestone, and then you have another source like a lid to your Tupperware container, more lava-based rock that's impermeable. Bermuda doesn't have a lid on its Tupperware container, so if we were to get any thermal energy, if there was anything down there, there's nothing to hold it in to control it. What you do is you put 2 holes in the Tupperware, you push water in, it comes out hot. If we push it in, it would come out wherever. So no, geothermal is not an option for Bermuda, but would be amazing base load if we could.
So can research into nuclear? So we can even know yet. Small, you know, decade down the road where it becomes safer and the technology is there. Is that
We continue to monitor technologies, small nuclear reactors, the SMR. They are something that is on the horizon. At one point, when I was looking at them, they were still too big. They're still an exclusion zone. When I say too big, they need to be less than our base load. Otherwise, we just throw heat away. We waste it. So in the future, way future, maybe, but I don't see it on the horizon for Bermuda today, because also nobody wants it to be in their backyard. So
Minister, just want to give you the opportunity to say something.
Well, certainly thank you for having the town hall meeting, as I have been extremely vocal as it pertains to the concern of the residents in the area. You have a group of residents in the area that are committed to seeing that this problem goes away. But you see a number of faces here, but they don't represent the entirety of the community that has challenges. And when I go knock on doorsteps, I get the challenges, I get the health concerns, and it's nothing that you can say in terms of mitigating away some of the concerns that they actually have. I think the ongoing engagement is extremely positive, so that you can hear firsthand the concerns of the residents, but also see that residents are actually committed to being part of a process to ensure that the communities are no longer polluted. And you should expect that residents continue to raise these concerns on an ongoing basis until the exchange. And it's extremely reasonable, but I would like to see from the company more proactive engagement with residents. If you know that a fallout happened, engage the residents in the area. Every resident should be clear. Like I heard a resident say, I didn't know my tank could be cleaned. Everybody in this room should be clear that the tank should be cooked, all the services that you provide for remediation. And that will be done by having ongoing engagement with the community. There are some residents that do not know that the roofs can be cleaned, how to get the roofs clean, and then what is the mechanism for payment and your assessment of that. I think that everybody in the area that is impacted should be clear on what options are available to them. But I don't think that this is going to be our last town hall meeting. I think that you're going to continue to hear the concerns of residents until the problem actually goes away.
Thank you for that. I think that is a legitimate request. And I think one of the things that we were passionate about is to take from this meeting things where we continue to grow and to do this better. Having a clear path, outlining how a person, we actually thought it was clear. It is not. It allows us to go test and adjust our position and make it better. This is a healthy exercise for us to sit in the room and hear what we have missed the mark on so we can find the mark and do it better. What we did not want to do is to come and literally promise things that we cannot deliver. What we can deliver is to make the process more seamless, to make it more transparent. We can commit to, if there are any exceedances, to make that process seamless and to act on that immediately, and people are not walking around with their property damaged. Yes, so this is something that we have to commit to. There's an ongoing process of what the future looks like. We want to continue to meet with the people in the room. When everybody came in initially, they felt it was going to be a waste of time because we're so used to coming to these spaces and getting empty platitudes. I want everybody to see that this is your team. I ask for the team, this is the rest of the executives that are at our company. These are all people that live in this country and in this community, and we're actually committed to making a difference. I thank everybody for coming out tonight. I thank you for spending 3 hours with us when you could have been doing a whole host of other things. We are going to tell you that the meeting is formally concluded. If you want to come around and have a talk with anybody on the team, we're just going to hang out for 30 minutes and feel free to come and have a chat about anything BELCO related, and we're just going to stay here to answer your questions for about half an hour. Thank you everybody for coming. We have some snacks in the back and things that you can take with you.